talking about minors. We've been talking about different ages of chinuch, of education, that we have for different mitzvos, depending, like we spoke about, the mitzvah of tefillin, right? What age does a child have to put on tefillin? So we saw a whole discussion in the Gemara. The Gemara says if he knows how to watch his tefillin, not to go ahead, and some commentators explain watch his tefillin. Rashi says he won't go not to enter the bathroom with his tefillin. Some say he knows how to make sure that he doesn't emit gases with his tefillin. So that was one of the things about the tefillin. They said that when is a father obligated to teach his son Torah? When he starts talking. Succah says when his speech is complete. Some say it's around 4 years old. Doesn't he have an obligation to teach his son Torah, Tziva, Lana, Moshe? Have an obligation to teach him the Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Such a young age, at 4 years old. We have different age. What age do you need to go ahead and take a lulav? We said the age of when you know how to wave the lulav, and the way we saw the Ravad Yosef in the Yalkut Yosef Shachna says it doesn't mean you have to know how to wave in the proper direction, proper order of direction. You know how to wave back and forth. The motion going back and forth. That's the age. It could be 6, 7, whatever that age. To look up exactly what that age is, but the person needs to be aware of that. When that age happens, you have a mitzvah to teach, you have obligation to teach your son Torah at that time. But, it's interesting. The Gemara said the obligation to teach your son Kriya Shema is the time that he knows how to speak. And the Gemara said when we say Kriya Shema, what is the obligation? The first pasuk of Kriya Shema. That's the obligation to train your son, is the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. Now, in the Shulchan Aruch, now I want to read to you the Shulchan Aruch. Good morning, Michael.
How are we?
Does Jaime know that you're on, Michael?
Don't worry. He'll come when he comes on. He'll know.
Okay.
Bezat Hashem, I'll try to join.
Okay, great. Good to see you. Welcome back. Hi, Michael.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay, yesterday we were learning about the idea, the obligation of a father to teach his son the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. The Gemara is on Membeis Lamed Aleph 42a, that there's an obligation to teach his son Kriya Shema. And the Gemara says, we mean the first pasuk of Kriya Shema when the child begins to speak. Okay? Which we just said a minute ago. Some explained, or Hashulchan said, it doesn't mean when the child is 2 years old, when he starts talking. It means when his speech is complete, maybe when he's about 4 years old or so, when his proper speech of a child, then you have an obligation to teach him the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. Now in Shulchan Aruch it says, here he talks about Ketanim. Ketanim, Peturin Rabbeinu Tam. Regarding children, a child is exempt from Kriya Shema when he did not reach the age of chinuch. When the child is not age of chinuch, he's not the age of educating the child. He's too young. He's exempt from Kriya Shema. But when he reaches the age of chinuch, the Chafetz Chaim says, the Rabbeinu Tam would hold, when he's around 6 or 7, depending how sharp the child is, the father is obligated to train the child to say the Kriya Shema, just like you have to train the child other mitzvot. Now, what does it mean to train the child to say Kriya Shema? And also Chafetz Chaim puts in, and also that he should read the Shema, he should read it in the Zman Kriya Shema. To read the Shema in the time of Kriya Shema, which is the mitzvah, as we know, Shema has a certain time, it's in the first 3 hours of the day, with the brachot that precede the Shema and that follow the Shema, which is a very tall order, which is the brachos, let's say in the morning, the brachot that precede the Shema is the brachot of Yotza Ora Vorach Hoshech, which concludes, from after Baruch Hu, to Gaal Yisrael. That would be the because the brachot beforehand is Yotza Morot and Bocha B'Moisa Ba'ava, and the bracha afterwards concludes. It starts with Emunah, goes V'Yatz V'Nachon, concludes with Gaal Yisrael. That would be the obligation, according to Rabbeinu Tam, of teaching your son Kriya Shema. And Rashi holds, even if the child reaches the age of chinuch, Rashi has a more lenient opinion. Even if a child is 6 or 7 years old, 10 years old, you have no obligation to teach your son to say the Shema, the full Shema, the 3 parashot of Shema, with the brachot before and the bracha afterwards. Why not? Because the father is not commonly found with the child at the time, the morning, at the time of Kriya Shema at night, and also in the morning, he's sleeping. The child is sleeping when the father is already was probably out of the house, and therefore there would not be, the father's not around to help train the child. So that would be according to Rashi. Now, and therefore the rabbis did not place the obligation of chinuch, of training the child to say the Shema with all the brachot that precede and afterwards, if the father is not there with the child. The schedules of the father and the child don't match so much. So that's what the Gemara says. That's what the Rashi holds. And the Shulchan Aruch says, "V'royui," it is appropriate to conduct yourself like Rabbeinu Tam. So the Mechaber Yosef Cairo, right? It's appropriate to train your child once he's already 6 or 7. It's appropriate. It doesn't say you're obligated. You're appropriate. The recommended way is to train your child to say the Shema, the full Shema, once he's already 6 or 7 years old. And the Chafetz Chaim explains that even though the law is more logical like Rashi, which seems to go like Rashi, and that's what the Vilna Gaon writes, but nevertheless, it's appropriate to conduct yourself like Rabbeinu Tam. And so too, it applies from the Rambam like that. Now, but then the Chafetz Chaim says, but regarding davening, prayer, if he reaches the age of training, everybody holds that you should train him regarding davening. Like he says later on in Kuf Vav, so it comes out that the age of training a child to daven would be an earlier age than training him to say the Shema with the brachot. The Chafetz Chaim puts in, but nevertheless, the first pasuk of Kriya Shema. See, here we have a whole discussion of regarding Kriya Shema. When do you have to train your son to say the Shema? But the first pasuk of Kriya Shema is a mitzvah on the father to teach him when the child knows how to speak, and not specifically during the time of Kriya Shema. So it comes out that our Gemara that we're learning, which says that the father's obligation to teach his son the first pasuk of Kriya Shema, that's not specifically in the time of Shema. That means any time of the day, you have a mitzvah to teach your son to say the pasuk of Kriya Shema. And also, according to this, I wonder, you might not, when you have the obligation to teach the Kriya Shema, do you have to do it twice a day? Maybe only once a day. It's not clear regarding when a child starts, it's 4 years old or whatever it is, you have to, this idea of saying Kriya Shema.
I would think that we would teach it to him twice a day if we're obligated twice a day.
But we're not teaching it. But the Chafetz Chaim says you're not obligated to teach him at the time of the Kriya Shema. So we're obligated to say
Yeah,
Kriya Shema. See, it seems to be two halachot. There's a halacha called the mitzvah of Kriya Shema to fulfill the mitzvah of Kriya Shema morning, and there's a mitzvah of just telling maybe that a declaration of faith. So it could be that there's a difference between the mitzvah of Kriya Shema, which the halacha seems to indicate you might not be obligated to teach him to say the Shema every day and every night in the time of the Shema, but maybe the pasuk, the first pasuk, which the Gemara says you're obligated to teach him when he knows how to speak, maybe it's coming to serve as a different purpose, Michael. Maybe it's coming to serve just as an idea of the child, being connected with the faith, independent of the mitzvah, whether you're doing the mitzvah of the Shema, accomplishing the mitzvah of Kriya Shema or not. Now, in the Yalkut Yosef, in the Ravadi Yosef, in the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he says, a child, when he reaches 6 years old, around 6, some say he's exempt from Kriya Shema, because since the father is not home at that time to train him, father's out of the house in the morning, early in the morning, and the father comes home at night, child might be already sleeping. But according to Rabbeinu Tam, you should train them to read the Shema. And he says and they said that that's what the appropriate thing is, to train them to say the Shema every morning, every night, to train them to say the Shema with the brachot. Okay, so it's to me this is a very interesting halacha or recommendation that will come out that someone has a young child, 6 or 7 years old. The recommended thing is that every day and every night you should go ahead and train him that he should go ahead and say the 3 parashas of the Shema with the brachot of the Shema. That's a nice tall order to what's suggested to do. Okay, just a beautiful thing to think about, and everyone should have remember this, whether it's their children, their grandchildren. Okay, I mean the chinuch is on the father, but the grandfather has a different mitzvah. Grandfather has a mitzvah teaches grandson Torah. That's an interesting mitzvah that a grandfather has. Okay, so with that, I thought that was very interesting. Oh, there's one more thing I think that it's very interesting. That there is the Bach. There is the Bach, that the Bach holds that even if we say, we say that where the Chafetz Chaim brings it down, that the main halacha would be that you do not have to train the child to say the Shema, 3 parashas with the Kriya Shema. You don't have to train him even when he reaches the age of chinuch, because you're not home to train him to read it in the right time. You're not home to be there. But the Bach says something very interesting.
All this talk about like a father being home to teach his kid, teach the son the Kriyat Shema and Torah. We've replaced that now with the yeshiva, because the father goes to work, and we replaced it with the yeshiva. So we're obligated we start teaching them from kindergarten. They know Shema. That's Achinuch starts at nursery. Right.
So you're saying the fact is today there is that we have that opportunity, because if the father's not home, the opportunity at least but Michael, maybe the time that they get to yeshiva, it could be you might already miss the time of the Shema in the morning, or the time that they get
from not the Zaman de Chinuch part of when they're the age of they're going back and forth of 6 years old. I think it even starts before, when they're going to school and they're being taught it, and the father's working and paying the school to teach them.
Right, that they're acting at their father's ages. But you're really saying, let's say the father has a mitzvah to train the son in Torah. So how is he doing that? He does it by sending the kid to yeshiva, and that's what Michael is saying. But Michael, that would be, what about if the yeshiva doesn't have yeshiva on Sunday? So there's no yeshiva on Shabbat.
There's an obligation still upon the father, of course, to teach the child directly. But in the course of having to go earn a livelihood, he
He has a
transfers
yeshiva.
that responsibility to the yeshiva by
Right,
paying them.
right. They act as his agent. But I think I'm just bringing up a point. If a day goes by and the child's education, the yeshiva's on off, the yeshiva's on vacation. If a parent has to make sure that he trains his son during that time period to learn Torah.
You're saying something very important. Like when my daughter was off from school, I said, "There's no school today, Shabbat." But did you pray? You pray every morning in school. Don't you
Exactly.
want to? Shabbat's the most important day. Don't you want to pray? And then she started praying on Saturday and
Beautiful.
Sunday.
Exactly. That's the way. But I don't think everyone knows that. I don't
I'm
think everyone
sharing.
has that.
That's why I'm saying it. I'm saying it because I don't think anyone knows that.
Right, exactly. You have an obligation, and someone's son, when they're training their son, and the son is off from yeshiva on Sunday, certain yeshivot are off on Sunday. You have to train. He has to learn on Sunday. He has to learn something.
Yes.
Now comes the Mishabura,
Shabbat.
Shabbat, exactly. Comes the Mishabura, and it's a chiyuv. The same way you would train your son to take a lulav and etrog, you have an obligation to at a certain age when the kid is able to knows how to wave the lulav and etrog. You have an obligation to train him. You have an obligation to teach him Torah every day. Now comes the Chafetz Chaim says. He says, Ayin bebach. The Bach holds if a child is 12 years old, everybody holds that the father has an obligation to train him. So the Bach is a very interesting opinion that he holds that even this whole discussion between Rashi and the Rabbeinu Tam, that Rashi is lenient, that even a child reaches the age of chinuch, you are exempt from training. He's exempt from saying the Shema, the full Shema, with the three parashot with the brachot that precede the Shema and follow the Shema. He's exempt, even if he reaches 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. But comes to Bach and says, but once the child reaches 12 years old, then you have to make sure you train him already to say the Shema with the brachot precede him before, and that's 7 days a week. That means a 12-year-old child, he's already 12. He's a big boy. He's going to be bar mitzvah in a year. So at that point, when we're already going to say that you have to go ahead and train him to say the Shema with the brachot that preceded and the brachot that followed.
You could count them as 10 in a minyan for zimun.
Yeah, but you can count them for the zimun. You can count them for zimun even before the age of 12. For Sfardim. Sfardim go ahead and they count the child who's under bar mitzvah.
Not for minyan, but for zimun.
For zimun, not for minyan, for tefillah, for davening, but they count it for zimun. They count that child for zimun once he reaches a certain age. A child of Ashkenaz.
If he's holding with the Kriyat Shema, Shabbat.
Okay, very good. I mean, the Gemara says if he knows Hayodei Lami Mevarchim, he knows when you say the zimun, you know who you're blessing, who's the blessing going to. We have to see halacha what they say, what that age is for the Sfardim. They actually would count. But I understand, Michael, it could be that they would even, I don't know if they in practice, that they might be able to count them even for a zimun of 3.
Yeah, I don't know that answer. I didn't know that one.
Yeah, but we can look that up. We can look that up in the Yalkut Yosef. But I think they count that child, but they only able to count one child. Let's say, like Michael said, for zimun of 10, you have a zimun of 10. You have 9 adults over bar mitzvah. You can count one child for if he's have a certain age that you could count them towards the zimun to say the Shem Hashem, or perhaps we'll see more about it, even a zimun of 3. Okay. Comes our Gemara. So that's, I think, a fascinating discussion. So what one of the chidushim that we said here is the split between the mitzvah of Kriya Shema with the 3 parshiot, the whole Shema, and the brachot that precede the Shema, the mitzvah of Kriya Shema, and just the pasuk of the first pasuk of Kriya Shema, which that training comes much, much earlier in the life of the child. Okay, which would come out in a certain sense that 7 days a week, a child's supposed to say every day, whether it's early in the morning or any time of the day, you have to train your child that he should say the pasuk Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. That's what a child, a Jewish boy, and it's nice to train the girls also in that, but I would think it's the obligation is more the Jewish boy, is to say the Shema Yisrael, Shem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad 7 days a week. Like Michael said, if a guy's off from school, yeshiva, doesn't mean now so let's say in yeshiva that he's saying the Shema, they're training him, but if he's not, and also I would say it should be part of the curriculum of the yeshiva that the child, when he's in kindergarten, pre-1A, first grade, he should say the Shema Yisrael Hashem, at least that pasuk every day, based on our Gemara. We have to check up. I'm going to have to ask in the yeshiva, Rav Moshe Feinstein, when I ask if that's what they do every day, is that part of the kindergarten, pre-1A, because like Michael said, if the yeshiva is acting as an agent of the parents, so when the kid is in yeshiva, so the yeshiva should train the child to do what the parents would need to do with the child, and the parents would teach the child Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad morning Jack. So therefore, I would say it should be part of the. I'm going to try to find out. Meaning,
it's also up to us, Rabbi, to remind the child. Say, I walk through the hallway saying Modeh Ani in the morning at 5 a.m. You know, when I get home and they're still sleeping, I walk through at 8:30 saying Modeh Ani. So they say Modeh Ani in their bed.
Right, but it'll come out from the Gemara. It will come out that it might be more important. I mean, in addition to the Modeh Ani that we say, it might be more important to train every child to say the pasuk Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad 7 days a week. That should be, and also that should be, might even be more even stronger responsibility. Okay. And then the other question is that the Gemara, when the Gemara says, when a child begins to speak, the Gemara also says the father teaches him Torah and Kriya Shema. And the Gemara says, what's the Torah? Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov. So we have to think about that also, right? If that's the Torah that the Gemara says to teach the child, so that should be something that has to be said 7 days a week also. The Gemara asks Torah Mahi, right? So we have to, and the Gemara concludes, says, what is the Torah that you have to teach the child? Right on here on Mem Beis Lamed Aleph, on 42a, it's Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov. So the question is the Gemara is very specific on what the Torah that you teach your child. So it doesn't say any Torah. There's a lot of Torah. Why does it, when the Gemara says you have to teach your son Torah, the Gemara says Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov, which also seemed to indicate that there should be a special focus
On the Metzorah from Moshe.
on that pasuk. See, this is something I see the commentaries, to discuss this. The word Torah could mean you teach your son Torah, but when the Gemara says you teach your son Torah, Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe, that's the first pasuk. You teach your son a Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe. But they bring from the Rabbeinu Tam that holds that no, that it's specific. So it seems to be a question is it that you have to teach him this pasuk regularly, or is it just you begin the child with this pasuk? Now, and the Aruch HaShulchan says that we begin teaching the child this pasuk Torah Tziva Lanu Moshe Morasha Kilat Yaakov to implant in the heart of the child the idea that the Torah was given in Hashemayim, and it's gonna remain forever. With Torah Sivalon Moshe, Moshe got the Torah from Hashem. Morashak Yilat Yaakov, that you have to Morashak Yilat Yaakov means it's a legacy, it's a heritage. You have to give it over to the future generations. The Torah will remain forever.
Rebbe, in Kiddushin, it talks about a father learning with his son and a father learning with his grandfather and grandson. And it's equivalent, it says, to Moshe Sinai learning Torah.
Right. Michael's pointed amazing Gemara in Kiddushin. It's around Lamed in Kiddushin, where it says that when a person goes ahead and he teaches his son or grandfather teaches his grandson Torah, it's as if he received it at Sinai. And the question is, in the Maharsha discusses over there, who received it at Sinai? Is it that the child received it at Sinai? Or is it the parent, actually the grandparent, when you're teaching it, as if you received it at Sinai? Good morning, thank you for joining. If you want, you could take a Gemara, you could do it just listening, whatever you have choice. Okay, we are now on Mem Beit Amud Aleph. We're on 42A, A4. We're discussing regarding a child. Until now, we've been discussing at which point, what's the age of a child to be responsible in certain mitzvot. Now we're discussing other things about a child. When could you entrust a child regarding certain other things? There comes the Gemara on 42A4 on the top of towards the top of the page. A child who knows how to watch his body. He watches his body from contracting contamination. He's careful not to go into a tent where there's a dead body, not to pick up something that's contaminated. Meaning sometimes, if a person, even if something's even if you don't touch the object itself, a bone of a dead body, but if it's in a layer, even if you have a package and you don't touch the bone itself, but if you're carrying the bone, a person would contract contamination. So a child that knows how to be careful, he's on top of his game. He's witty enough, smart enough to be careful to watch himself, not to become in contact with a dead body or an tent of a dead body. But he's not on top of his game regarding, let's say, his hands. So Rashi explains that there are people that know how to be careful that I won't go to a certain place, but nevertheless he'll know not to come in contact with a dead body. But there are some people, but when it comes to his hands, he might not want to have Mansur, but he might not be on top of his game on what his hands touch. The rabbis said that a person's hands the rabbis instituted a contamination on a person's hands. And therefore, that means if you don't wash your hands, let's say right now, if I won't wash my hands, if I cannot touch truma, because my hands, the rabbis placed called a second degree, it's like a sheni, that my hands are contaminated, and by washing my hands, now I could touch truma. And that's why one of the main reasons why we wash our hands before we have bread. And why do we wash our hands before we have bread? Because the Kohanim need to wash their hands before they come in contact with Truma. And we want the Kohanim to be in shape, that they're already trained that when they have Truma, when the Beit HaMikdash will be rebuilt, they will already be in training not to touch the Truma without washing their hands. So therefore, because of that, they need to wash their hands before they have bread. And the rabbi said it's going to be much easier for them to be in, if everybody would be doing the same thing, it'll be even easier for them to also train properly. If they're going to be the only ones that have to do that, it'll be more difficult. So therefore, they said everybody has to wash their hands before you have bread. There's another reason, cleanliness is godliness. You should wash your hands before you eat. So there's different reasons why we wash our hands. But and washing hands remove that contamination. So a child might be able to keep his hands, might not be on top of the game with his hands, but he might be on top of the game regarding his body. So if he knows how to, he might, because a child, he might wash his hands, but he might touch things that he's not sure about. So therefore, we say like this: Hayodea lishma gufo, a child that knows how to watch his body, not that his body shouldn't come in contact with contamination. So ochlen gufo tahirot, you could eat tahirot, things that need to be eaten in a pure state of purity. If this kid is on top of his game, he knows how to watch his body, so you could trust that to eat the taharot. You could trust that to eat food that needs to be eaten in purity, even though the child came in contact with that food. You don't have to worry that he's contaminated the food. If he's of age and you'll ask him, he'll say, "Yeah, I'm at top of my game. I know to be careful." And there's also another concept that's playing, even though the kid is a minor, but the food has something called a chazakah. What's the chazakah? The chazakah is the status that it was before. What was the status before? The status before was it was tahar. It was pure. We wonder if there's a change in the status. So the fact that we have already an established status of chazakah, purity, and now the fact that the child is of age, of knowledge, he doesn't just walk wherever you want. He doesn't walk into a funeral place. He's careful about, then you can rely on that. You could, if he comes in contact with food that has to be impurity, you can rely on it that it still remain pure and you can eat that food. But not necessarily we said he's on top of his game regarding his hands. But if he's lishma at yadav, but if he knows how to watch his hands, so then you could go ahead and ochlan al yadav tairot. So then even if his hands touch things that have to be eaten in purity, but since if he knows how to watch, good morning, he knows how to watch his hands, so you could go ahead and eat food that his hands touched. You don't have to worry about that he contaminated it. Now, hayodeh li sha'el, a child, if you would ask him a question, he'll know how to answer the question. You would say to him, "Did you touch this thing that's contaminated?" He'll say either yes, or he'll say no, or he'll say, "I don't know." So if you saw that he came close to something that's contaminated, and we don't know, did he touch it or he didn't touch it? So b'shut yachid. So if the question came in a private domain is a place. Let's say there's less than 3 people. It was a place. It was a private secluded area that people are not commonly found. Sveiko tameh. If there's a doubt, if the doubt came in a specific place that's private place, and you're not, and there's a question if the child touched this specific, meaning here we know there's a contamination here. The only question is, did the child touch it or not touch it? So here we're going to say, so it depends where this question is. If the contamination is found in a private area, then the child, we say it would be, we're more strict. And b'shut rabim, if the contamination happened, if the item that was contaminated is found in a public property, so sveiko tahor. Then if we have a question, we say, if we're not there, we could be more lenient. Let's see how the Rashi explains. The Rashi explains the following. Rashi says, because according to what we said, if the kid is of age that he knows what he's doing, so if you would ask him and he says, "I didn't touch it," there should be no problem. So Rashi explains the following. If you ask the kid and he says, "I don't know," here's the case. There is tumah in a private place, in a private home, private area that nobody comes to. We don't know, and we ask the kid, "Did you touch this?" And he says, "I don't know if I touched it." If he's of age that if you ask him a question, he's not competent to answer the question, so then we have to be strict. But if he's an age that he's competent, he could tell you, I touched it, I didn't touch it, or I don't know if I touched it. So if he says I don't know, then that becomes a real suffix, a real question. And there is we have a precedent on the halakha. When you have a suffix contamination in a private area, where the halakha said you're strict. A suffix contamination in a public area, the halakha said you're lenient. And what's the main source for one of them? A sota, a lady, a married woman, who's alone with another man, who violated the warning. She was told, "Don't be alone with this man," and she was alone with the man. And she was enough time doing it, she could have done a sin with the man, but we don't know if she did this, actually slept with the man. So we say she's forbidden to her husband until she drinks the water of the sota. So we see it's a suffix. It's a question if she became contaminated in a secluded area, in a private area, and we say suffix tumah in a private area. We have to be. Torah says you're strict until she drinks the water, and if she doesn't blow up, then she can go back to husband. But a suffix question of tumah in a public area, we're lenient. If the child says, I don't know, and he's of age to know that he doesn't know, and a lot of people need to know when they don't know, right? Sometimes people think they know everything. Then that will be, that's what the Gemara is talking about. We'll continue tomorrow. We want to welcome, what's your name? What's your last name? Sunny Ginde. Oh, yes. Yes, very nice. What's say? I met your mother. I met your mother on Friday. Very nice. Okay, thank you so much for joining. We're here every day. 6:45 to 7:25. Anytime you come, we'll take you, Monday through Friday. Welcome to
have a great day, Rabbi.
You too, have a great day. You too. Do some Succah? Any special Succah on Friday? Shabbat? No special Succah. Okay.